one of the things about animation, and again, I'm going to kind of aim this to sort of someone that perhaps has maybe done a little bit of animation or none at all. I'm going to kind of aim it to that. So if you are an expert, you're probably going to think, cut to the chase. But yeah, I'll aim it to sort of that level. One of the things that kind of the learning process quite early on, in fact, very early on, is getting used to how to use the software, because it won't make you work in any one particular way. There are certain things you have to do to get an animation produced, but it doesn't actually make you work in a particular sequence as such. You can work however you want. And what I mean by that is, for example, if you look at a piece of a nice piece of sort of what I'd probably call storytelling animation, something like Pixar pieces, a lot of that will be the character moving from one unique position or pose to another unique position or pose. And by telling the sequence of poses and expressions, we get the idea, we get the story. An alternative sort of way of working is something called cycles, I suppose you'd call them, animation cycles. For example, a character walking down the street. There's no reason, if you are going to animate a character walking along, that you would want to animate the character with one foot forward, then the other foot forward, and then we're back to the left foot forward again, and back to the right foot forward, and left foot and right foot. You could be there for days, weeks, and months, simply having a character walking along. So what you could do instead is animate the character with one foot forward, say the right foot, then position them so their left foot is forward, and then we'll go back to where we started, which is the right foot forward, and then ask the software to repeat that. And by doing that, we've made life a whole lot easier for us. So what I mean, for example, is, let's have a quick look. If you do want to give it a try, a good thing to start with is a walk cycle. This process of animating a character in one position with the one foot forward, then the other foot forward, then go back to the start. It's a good way to start off for a number of reasons. But first of all, let's say you're having trouble with software, in which case search for Maya trial. And what you can get is a free download of Maya software for 30 days. So instantly you've now got the software you can start practicing with. Then perhaps you want a character to animate. You can go for free Maya rigs. And suddenly there's a website that gives you, once it loads, links to, there you go, a whole bunch of characters that you can animate. And suddenly now we can pick a character that we want walking down the street. And all that's missing now is some sort of help to get us to do it. And a good way to start is you can go for animation walk cycle thumbnails. It is a perfect way to start. And then if you click on images, you will see a whole world of information that can help you get started to animate this character walking along. Here, for example, that's a nice one. I'm just going to move a window out of the way. So the good news about walk cycles is they do a number of things for us as animators, especially early on. On the short course, an MA Escape, which is the one I'm involved with, we do these sort of things called walk cycles in week 2, which is actually quite soon, quite early on, for a number of reasons. It just basically helps us learn, first of all, the software. We get used to the software, and also it helps us get used to how people move, for looking at how people move and translating that into our animation. For example, here we'll look at this sort of walk cycle thumbnails, and all it really means is a guide of poses. It's going to say at frame 1, that we'll come to in a second. I'll show you an example of this in a moment. It's saying that the character puts his foot on the ground. And you can see right at the end, it's exactly the same position. The foot comes forward again, and halfway, the left foot is forward. So what this is really saying is that we start our animation off with one foot hitting the ground, then the character brings their other foot forward, and then they bring the original foot forward again, and then we repeat. And then we can come in and fill in the gaps. At frame 7, we can have what's typically called the passing pose, when one leg is passing another one. And another good thing about walk cycles to do is they're mirroring each other. So once you're happy with one leg moving forward, you will find animating the other leg moving forward easier, because it's basically replicating the process. But it's not just about the feet. This is another good reason why walk cycles are really good to do. If you were to watch any one, it sounds like a sort of weird thing to say, but if you sat and watched, maybe if you're having a coffee and looking out the window and people watching, and you sat and actually watched how they walk, you can tell a whole world from that sort of position. What I mean is by how they walk and what they're doing. This couple, for example, now I know they're tied to each other by arm, they locked arms, but look how they're leaning into each other. He could optionally just lean away. He'd get wet, but he's leaning in under an umbrella. So you instantly get an idea that these two are very close. They're happy to share under an umbrella and they've got locked arms. And yet all they're doing is walking along. Let's just skip, see if we can find some others. This person walking along with their bag. I know it's a wet day and everything, but look how they're kind of marching along. There's no stopping them. That arm's swinging really nicely. That person looks like they're in a rush to get out of the rain, I imagine. And let's skip to another video. That one, there you go. Let's look at New York, I think it is. Let's find not an advert. Oh, the curse of YouTube. We're going to sit through 4 seconds of advert now. Come on, see how quickly I can click it. There you go. All I want is some people walking. There you go. Again, we've got more shoppers. They're always busy walking around. This person, where are we going? Let's have a look. This lady's walking a little bit slower. She's pulling a basket with her, going along pretty slowly, pretty casually. Look at him, he's really marching along as well with his bag. So what I'm trying to say is that we don't always walk the same way. We walk depending on how we feel, and we walk depending on where we're trying to go. We walk depending on what we're thinking. If you're sad and feeling maybe a bit miserable, you'd hunch forward and look down. If you're happy, maybe you puff your chest out, and if in a cartoony way, maybe you bring your arms up. So I suppose what I'm trying to say is that by doing one of these things called a walk cycle, we do a whole world of different things. We practice in animation. We're getting used to the software, but we're also making a character look like they're thinking and look like they're feeling a certain way. So that's kind of one of the reasons why we do walk cycles really, really early on. It also gets you introduced into what is typically called, I suppose, the 12 principles of animation. So this comes from a book called The Illusion of Life. And it's basically the Disney animators came up with these terms, not because for any other reason, apart from they were all talking different languages. And I don't mean they come from different countries or whatever. Let's say you were trying to describe how a cartoony character hits the ground and goes splat. They were all using different phrases, like it hits the ground and goes splat, or another one was saying, the squashability of it or whatever. There was no common way to describe different things. So if you wanted to ask someone about a particular aspect of your animation, everyone was using different terms and no one sort of understood what the other person was particularly on about. So what they came up with was these 12 principles to use as a common language. And it helps us to sort of apply these into a walk cycle. So a walk cycle will include all these elements. So for example, when we're walking, next time you're doing a walk, just be aware of what your hips are doing, because they'll be going left and right, they'll be going up and down, they'll be rotating in every direction. So again, that's another good reason for why walk cycles are a perfect intro to animation, because you can get a character and you get used to the software, and you can start to have personality in there. So this is one of those walk cycles. Like I say, if you've never tried one, literally have the trial for Maya, download one of the free rigs that I just pointed out, and you just search for Maya free rig, search for Maya thumbnails. If we go back to that, there's also, you'll see that if I again move that window out of the way, this is one person's collection of, these are the poses that I want my character, or positions I want my character to be in at each of these frames. 1, 4, 7, 10, 13, 16, blah, blah, blah. Let's look at another person's collection of thumbnails. Let's look at, that's a good one. So these ones come from the Animator Survival Kit by Richard Williams. But you can see it's exactly the same poses. It's saying there's a contact pose, i.e. the heels just hit the ground. Then what really happens is the left foot comes forward and then the right foot comes forward, and then we're back where we started and we can repeat. But you can see the same gaps in between, the same positions in between. There's the passing pose where one leg passes the other one. And there's a point here in between these two where the hips squash down. So what we're really doing is we're raising our hips up around here, and we're doing that to bring the leg up. Can you, next time you go for a walk, try to keep your hips level and just bring your foot up. It's a really weird thing to do. You don't do it because it just strain on the leg is massive. So what happens around here is the hips come up, and it brings to help bring the foot up. The hips come up, which helps bring the knee up, which brings the foot up a lot easier. But then what happens is the moment we start to lower off our hips to enable to put the foot down, we don't just suddenly stop with a bang. That big old weight of a body that we have as humans squashes the body down, and then we squash, but then we rise back up again in order to lift the other leg. So now we've got the hips coming up and down. And like I say, they'll also shift left and right. Okay, another little test is that if you try doing a walk without moving your hips left and right, or even just try standing centrally on both feet, don't move your hips at all and just lift one leg, one foot. Chances are you'll just tip over. So what we need to do is, and we do it without even thinking, we shift our weight over to the foot that's not going to move, that then allows us to lift the other foot. And then we move it over to that foot once it goes on the ground, shift it away from the left foot, and that allows us to bring the left foot up, and off we go. So the hips are doing all kinds of funky things to enable us to do walks. So again, that's another good reason why a walk cycle is a good place to start. So I'm not going to do a walk cycle right now because, like I said, they're pretty, not say straightforward. They're a good place to start. So and they're easy to find good reference, such as these diagrams, and get going on. But the problem with walk cycles is everybody knows that it's a cycle. Let me show you what I mean. So they're a good place to start. They have huge benefits to doing them. But when people look at them, they realize something's not quite right. And I'll show you what I mean. So I guess first of all, let's say if you're not familiar with this screen now, it's called Maya, Autodesk Maya. So it's a software we use at Escape. Really quick intro, I suppose, to Maya is that this piece in the middle is a piece of 3D world. And I've incorporated the Rocket Girl rig here, Rocket Girl character. She's looking a bit concerned. And she's already walking. She's not moving along. She's not moving ahead, but I've got her walking on the spot just for the sake of ease of reference, really, so we can see what she's doing. It's an easy step to have her moving forward later. So this is the Rocket Girl rig. I'm just going to switch some bits off because I only just opened this up. And each of these little weird funky colors around the character, around her, these little weird shapes, they let us move the individual bits and pieces. So if I grab that one on the head and rotate it, we can have her head moving around. And all I've done is posed her out in a number of different frames, which is these along the bottom, where each frame is a position in time. And what the software will do, will fill in the gaps. So as I scrub around it, you can see forward and back, she goes from one position to the next. And you can hopefully see the hips going up and down a little bit. And if we look from the front, maybe we've got a bit of shifting as well. There you go. Slightly shifts over to here to free up this leg, and then shifts over to the other side slightly to free up this leg. And it hasn't got to be a huge amount. There you go. So it's a really simple little walk cycle. Now she's looking a little bit cautious for a reason. When like we saw in the YouTube videos, everyone walks around differently depending on how they're feeling, what they're thinking, and what they're doing. And I was picturing for her, for Rocket Girl, she's walking around an alien landscape somewhere, and she can hear some strange sounds, and she's not sure what it is. So that's the idea. That's the story for her. But hopefully you can also see, if I get this screen up a little bit, some dots in there. Now, if I select all of these controls, which are around her, you will see that, to click there you go, there's a whole collection of different dots and things. So each of these dots is a position, and she's moving between them. But this is a cycle. What I mean is, if I want her walking forwards for, let's say, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, I don't want to keep doing left foot forward, right foot forward, left foot forward, right foot forward. I want the software to do it for me. So the end position there, where are we? Go there, repeating, there you go. So the end position is exactly the same as the first position. So what I've asked the software to do is to say, animate her walking along, and now repeat that animation, because it is, as the name suggests, a cycle. It's a repetition. I'll just hit play. So we'll see the one step. Let me just hide that as well. And let me get rid of those horrible controls so you can actually see her walking. There she goes, walking, walking, walking. So I'm not doing loads and loads of steps. I haven't animated her doing loads and loads of steps. Let me just check that. That's fine, yeah. All I've animated is this little bit from there to there. She should, in theory, stop now, but I've asked the software to repeat the animation. And you can see that here if I do view, here, there you go. What the software is doing for me is saying now, okay, you want her taking these steps where she's going, what's she doing? She's doing left foot forward, right foot forward. And then I need to shift it back a bit. No, there you go. Left, right, left. Let's grab the lot, make sure they're all there. There you go. So she's stomping along, and I've asked the software to repeat it, and you can see it's got the same wiggly curves to show the animation is carrying on. But if I play this, you'll see the downside of cycles, a repetition in animation. I hit play. So she's basically doing, I've got her walking pretty slow because, like I say, she's in a scary landscape. She doesn't know what's going to happen. Let's extend that a bit. It's going to get to the end and then it will repeat. So you'll see it jump a little bit in a second. There you go. It's just repeating now. So the downside of these cycles is that everybody knows it's a cycle. It's repeating, and everyone can see that it's repeating. People start watching it and thinking she's doing the same thing over and over again. And you don't have to be an animation expert to realize that. As humans, we kind of recognize that in sort of instinctively that patterns are repeating. It's basically, I think the term seriation. It's our instinctive nature to try and predict what someone or something will be doing next. So let's say, for example, there's a tiger in a forest, and this tiger is slowly walking past you. You wouldn't necessarily run away then. You'd wait and pause to see what happens to the tiger. And if the tiger then turns and comes towards you and starts getting faster and faster and faster, then you'd probably run. Because what you've done in your head is you predicted that tiger is first of all coming towards me and also is getting faster. Therefore, it makes sense that in a moment, if I don't do anything, I am, what's the difference between seriation and anticipation? Oh, right, okay. I'll answer that in a second. Okay, let me just, yeah. So if you see the tiger picking up speed and it hasn't yet got you, what you've done is you picked up that, okay, this tiger is getting faster and faster and faster. It's coming at me, therefore it's going to get me. And if there's something like this, where there is no change in speed, nothing changing whatsoever, you instantly realize that nothing's happening. The character is repeating exactly the same thing, 100%. You twig it as being unnatural because you can't now predict what's going to happen because of that exact repeating. So it's totally unnatural to have 100% repetition. So all you'll end up doing is making your character look like a wind-up toy, a little tin toy that you wind up, put on the ground, and they do the same thing over and over again. And people will think that's a wind-up toy. And that's what she looks like now. She looks like a wind-up toy. She doesn't look like a character that's on an alien planet that is worried about what's happening. She looks like a wind-up toy. Yeah, anticipation is obviously is more like having a pause. Yeah, it's a similar. I can get what you mean. It's coming from the other direction, I suppose. Anticipation in animation is more about having a pause or a sign that you're giving the viewer that something is about to happen, so they don't get shocked or surprised. So, I mean, a typical anticipation is the jump. If someone's going to jump in the air, they squash down and then they jump up. And if you want to increase the anticipation, they squash down and they wait and then they jump. If someone just stands there and leaps into the air, the viewer will go, what the hell? I didn't realize, didn't see that coming. So anticipation is the trick of balancing, guiding the viewer to what's going to happen next without making it obvious unless you want to make it obvious. So that's what anticipation is. It's not shocking the viewer. I guess seriation is kind of more like our natural instinct to put things in order. So it's more like something that just humans do rather than something specific to. I guess it is kind of along like you're anticipating that the tiger's going to get you. So yeah, it's a bit of crossover there. Cool. So anyway, so she looks like a robot and a wind-up toy. And that's kind of the thing I wanted to show you today, is that we can change that fairly easy and without messing around with what we've already done. So what we'll go for straight away is an animation layer. So like I said before, let's bring back my animation. Here she is walking along, and here are the keys. So keys are stored values for each one of these little controls. And all it's doing is filling in the gaps and repeating it. Now I want to animate her walking along in, I'm picturing her on this alien planet and she hears sounds, something over maybe to her left or right even. Let's go right first. And then she hears something over to her left as well, and she's not sure where it is. And then maybe she looks again straight ahead. So all I want is to turn right and turn left very quickly, maybe look around, maybe the eyes are going to move a little bit quickly because she's not sure what she can see or hear. And then she'll go back to where she is now and carry on walking a bit more. Now, I could, if I wanted to, first of all, convert this little short sequence that I've got into a longer sequence and ask the software to convert what it's doing now, which is repeating my animation, into keys that I can then change. I can't change the animation here once I leave this point because there is no animation, it's just repeating these. So anything I do here to change it will be changed here as well. All it's doing is repeating, so I can't change what doesn't exist. So I could potentially get these repeated and repeated and repeated, and there's a few ways to do that, but I don't really want to do that. I want to leave this, what I've done so far, untouched. I don't want to mess around with this. For example, you can see her head's moving, her body's moving, her hands are moving, her arms are moving. I want to sort of simply do her turning. So it would actually be quite tricky for me, or relatively tricky for me, to add in an extra piece of animation for her to turn and look up and still keep moving as if she's walking. What I want to do is to have her doing what she's doing now, but on top of that, have her turn and look. And I can do that fairly easily, he says. Having said it's fairly easy, you know, today is the day that Maya is going to probably crash like crazy on me, but we'll give it a go. We're always open to the threats of technology cursing us, but it is in theory fairly easy. So as you can see, here's all the keys for the walk cycle, and I'm not going to touch them. What I'm going to do is squish this down a bit, and over to this right hand side there's something called the channel box, and in there's a little box on the right, and there's a little tab that says anim. And you can see here it says base animation, and as the name suggests, it's the main animation, and in this case it's her walking. I happen to put it in there. So bearing in mind I want to put on top of this, I still want her to do exactly what she's doing now. I want her to turn and look. What I could do is create another layer, another piece of animation, and just simply animate her turning and looking, and then turning and looking straight ahead. And what the software will do is it will play both on top of each other. So I'll have a piece of animation of her walking on its own. And then all I've got to do is a piece of animation of someone literally standing there going, look right, pause, look left, pause, look straight ahead. And the software will combine the two, and it will say, okay, here's the walking. And on top of that, you've got the look right, look left, and look straight ahead. So let's give it a go. And they're quite a funky, quick way of getting a nice result. And hopefully once we've done it, you'll see it's changed the whole thing. It's made it look more natural because now we haven't got that wind up toy mechanical look of a pattern that's repeating. So in fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to lock this. I'm going to put the little padlock on, and you can see they've all gone dark. I can't change these now. So whatever I do now, it will not affect how she's walking. It's completely safe. Now to animate her turning, thinking ahead, what do I need to have someone turn? I kind of feel like their hips would turn, their chest would turn, and their heads would turn. And maybe the arms. Let's do the head. Let's stick with the head, chest, and waist and hips for now, and we can add another one in later. So in order to add some extra animation, then what I want to use is her waist, which I think is that one. Let me just grab it and wiggle it. There you go. So I'll not use that. So yeah, I'll have that one. So I'll have that one. And her chest, I'll do it super quick because time is that one. So I'll grab her chest, it's that one, and her head is that hoop there. These are the three I want to use for the turn. And then I'm going to click an icon that basically adds those three items I've selected to an animation layer, and I can click on it. And you can see the moment I click on it, it's empty, and yet she's still walking. So what it's saying is, feel free to animate the hips, the chest, and the head. Here's a lovely clean slate for you to work in with just those three controls. And now just animate someone turning. In fact, I'm going to rename it because that means nothing to anyone. Let's call it body turning. That's spell right. There you go, body turning. Makes more sense to me. So at the moment then, I'm going to store that to begin with, she's in this pose. She's walking along. So I'm just going to hit a button there just to quickly add some stored values. It's going to store that she's walking like this. And I'm going to play it for a bit, and then I'm going to stop it at the point where I feel like she would start to turn. I'll just do a second or two. Walk, walk, walk. Let's say about there. So this is the last position where she's going to be looking ahead. So I'll just store that as well. And now we've got some flat line there. You can see I've stored that value. So it means nothing's changed. And I've got some red markers there to show me. Now I want to turn. I just wanted to turn and look right maybe. I'll do this super quick. Let's try it about there. I'm going to set this position. She's going to turn her hips a little bit. I feel like she'd turn that way. And she would also kind of shift away a bit. She's going to look to our right. And if you picture, I tend to do it quite a lot, sit there and do what the character is going to do and feel what's happening to me. So she's going to look right. And as I do that, I actually feel myself leaning left, but looking right. And my weight is shifting over there. So what I'm saying is that I'd shift my weight over there a bit and down a bit. And how's she looking? Let's have a go. I'll do this super quick and come back and change it later if you want. At this point, the chest would kind of, I feel like I'd lean away, but then turn towards, but maybe forward a bit. And the head finally would definitely look up, across, but I'd also tilt. I feel like I'd tilt my top of my head away a bit like that. There you go. So what I've now got is walking, walking, walking. This is the last point where she carries on walking before now the character turns to look up. So I'll just play it to see how timing is. It's a little bit slow. I feel like she would hear something and she would want to look pretty quickly. So I'm just going to make that happen a little quicker. Quick play again. Bit too fast, maybe. About there, let's call that done. There, time-wise. There you go. But you can see what's happening here is I've just done really quick two poses, but we don't really move like this. We don't move with everything happening at once, which is what's happening now because I've literally just turned everything at once. What we do is if we hear something up there, we're going to be quick with the eyes. The eyes are kind of the eyes are the fastest muscle, have the fastest muscles in the body. So the eyes are going to zip really quickly. Then the head's going to move next because the head just has to move itself. It's not too heavy. The chest has to move the head and the arms, the shoulders. So they're going to move a little bit slower. And the poor old hips, they got to carry all this weight. So they're going to move slowest. So I suppose what I'm saying is that I'm going to come back in, grab the head and make that happen a little bit earlier just by shifting it a couple of frames. Actually, let's go back because I want the chest to be earlier as well. So head, chest, make them both a couple of frames earlier. So they're going to happen a little bit earlier. Head, make that a couple more. And now hopefully the head kicks in, head starts turning, then the chest, and then the hips. But now I've got the eyes. I'll come back and do the eyes in a second because I'm going to do them on another animation layer. So just get the main motion going. So she hears something, looks across, But then again, there's another problem now, is that we don't turn our heads and freeze like that. That's a bit weird. So all I'm going to do is just maybe, as she keeps going, she just tilts a bit more just to keep her alive. And what would the head do? Maybe she starts to look up and tilts her head a bit more. There you go, so it's a tiny bit more motion. And then we'll do a quick one where she then zips to the other way. So all I'm really animating, and you can see the keys here, that the stored values, it's really straightforward. She's doing nothing. This is her turning. This is her moving very, very slightly because there's not much change. And then I want her to zip back. Maybe she hears something the other side. So let's say at this point, let's play it. Hang on a second. Looks, pauses, here's something the other side. So let's store those. And now she's going to hear something from the other direction. So let's grab everything. That key's all fine. Store that for everything. There you go, just making sure everything's stored, otherwise it'll look weird. And now maybe she turns the other way. You can see the black ones, that's just the walk cycle. So turn, super quickly, he says. Just gonna see how the hips look. Not enough. I'm gonna fuss now, aren't I? There. Let's have the chest move. I'll come back and mess it up in a minute because it's going to be too synthetic otherwise. Let's have a quick look. Stir. That's not too bad, I think. Still too slow. So let's grab that lot and speed it up. I feel like she'd hear that. She hears another sound. She's not going to hang around. Okay, it's a bit mechanical. So let's mess it up a bit. The head will be first. So let's make the head there. And the chest maybe a little bit earlier. There. And then we're going to come in and make sure that nothing stops moving. Maybe the chest carries on a little bit. Maybe she dips her chest down, but keeps looking up because she's trying to duck away from whatever it is. Let's keep her head alive. And then quickly, super quickly, because there is something else I kind of want to show you as well. That'll do, yeah. But then maybe she realizes there's nothing there. Timing's a bit off, but it's fine. About now, she realizes there's nothing there. So let's say she then goes back to walking straight ahead. That's the nice easy one, because what I can do is say, return her everything, return all these body parts, the hips, the chest, the head, back to its start position. And what she'll do is then go back upright. But again, let's just change the timing because we never move in one go. Again, if you sat there and realized how you move, you might think, well, I'm going from one position to the next. You are, but every body part has its own time. Every body part will move at a different time. It's generally easier to get the poses in first. We start here, we finish there, and then come back and work out, okay, what really happens? What really moves first or not? So again, I'm just going to really quickly take those two, where ship those two there. That's her going back, and we'll make them a little bit earlier, and we'll make the head a little bit earlier. But maybe the head takes a bit longer to do it. So let's grab that. There you go, that feels a bit better. There, and then goes back. Cool, okay. So I'm just gonna do a quick save because I don't want to do that again. The software will crash, but her eyes look weird. The reason her eyes look weird is because they're stuck inside her head. What I mean is her eyes are only moving with the head. And again, if you sat there and moved your head without moving your eyes as well, it would look weird. Our eyes rotate in our sockets. So let's add a new animation just for the eyes, a new animation layer just for the eyes. So what I'll do is I'll lock this one and I'll do another layer with just the eye control. And I'll click on the same icon. And maybe I'll call this eyes moving, or just eyes. And now all I have to worry about is setting the keys on the eyes. Again, you can see it's lovely and clean. There's no keys there. There's no stored values. I can just focus purely on what the eyes are doing. And let's have a play. So when does she start to move? She starts to look around here. There you go. about there. Now the eyes are going to be super quick. Like I said, they're the fastest muscle in the body, so they fly around. And what I want the eyes to do is to move quite a bit earlier than the head. So I'm looking for the point where the head moves, and it's there. So what I'm going to say is go back a few. Let's store that and say at this point, the eyes start to move. I'm just going to see how that looks. I want the eyes to start moving, and then they're going to drag the head with them. That's a bit too early. So a few, there you go. So now the eyes move, and they get to a point where the eyes want to see more, so they're going to drag the head around. But what's going to happen is the eyes are going to get to their destination point before the head. So the head stops around there pretty much. So I'm going to go back a few frames and say the eyes, you reach your position there. And then maybe bring them back a bit to stop them looking weird. So what I've got is the eyes looking like they're going first and the rest of the body's following. And let's do the same again. Here, she's heard another sound. Her eyes are going to want to look really quickly in case it's something attacking her. So let's work out. The head starts then. So let's undo that one. So when would the eyes start moving? They would kind of start moving a bit earlier, around there. Let's have them the eyes coming really quickly, moving a lot really quickly. So and then she zips around and the eyes reach their destination super quickly, because that's what eyes do, and then level off a bit. So what we've got is, and then come back, there you go. And then we just got one more to do where she looks straight ahead. So let's finish off the eyes. This time we'll have the head lead. What I mean is sometimes you look at things and you think, is that okay? And you think, yeah, it's okay. And you'll start to turn away, but your eyes will keep looking until they have to turn back. So this time I'm going to have the head lead. What I mean is the head will start and the eyes will try and stay where they are. So maybe about there. That's where the head starts moving. Head's turning away. Tell the eyes, now you stay up there for a little bit longer. Until she gets to there, and then they're going to really quickly dart forwards maybe. So we go, see an eye dart. There you go. And we can do more. What's the time? 7:40. So I've got one more other to show you. So I'll just quickly, you could obviously do the arms as well. I'll really quickly do the arms, then we'll still have time to do the alternative one. But what you're seeing then is multiple pieces of animation playing on top of each other. And the benefit of doing it this way is we can just focus on one thing at a time. We're only looking at one thing at a time. If I come back and switch everything on and grab everything, that is what else it would look like. If we hadn't used this method, that's what we'd be dealing with. That's what we'd be looking at, which is doable, but it's obviously more complex. And the idea is to make life as simple for ourselves. So that's why this method, hide that, lock that even. There you go. You can work on the eyes. If you want to, you can work on the body turning. And if you want to, you can come back and we've done nothing. We've changed nothing in terms of the actual character walking. That's all still safe. But this, the moment we do this, she suddenly doesn't look like a cycle. It's now someone looking around because she's heard something in the distance and she's not sure where it is. You don't know where it's coming from. Also, it'd look better if we had the arms as well. What's the time? 7:40. I'll really quickly do an arm just to show you that, you can start layering in more and more of this sort of focused animation. And every time you layer in more, you're breaking away from that repetitive cycle that people can see, and you're making something that's actually quite entertaining to watch. I'll really quickly do maybe just the upper arms. Oh, that'd be weird. So let's just grab the lot. So I'm grabbing the hands, the elbows and the wrist, and add another layer, and let's just call this arms. Only reason is because what I'm thinking is when you turn like this, like that, your arms would swing out. So let's have a go. Let's say from that point, nothing. Then as she turns, maybe this arm comes up and forward. Try to do it really quickly, because like I say, there's one more little trick to show you that using a similar method, but in a different way. There you go. So now that arm swings out and forward as she turns, in which case maybe the other one swings back, because she basically wants to open up her arms in case something comes and attacks her. So maybe at the same point, when she turns, this arm swings back, but also up, just in case, because she's trying to be, she's worried something's going to come and get her. That's a thumb. I'm not going to take it down to thumb level right now. There you go. So now the arms swing back to match the body moving. That's the left arm looks okay there. I'll leave that, but maybe around here, the right arm looks a bit strange. So let's make that one. There. When does she start to turn? She starts to turn there. So now the arm swings forward. Again, all I'm thinking about is one body part and layering it on top and thinking, how can I improve what she's already doing, and just focusing on one thing at a time. There you go. And then finally, I grab everything, tell her when she starts to straighten up, the arms to go back to normal. Around there. There you go. So what you got now is someone that doesn't look like a cycle. Yeah, it looks like a cycle to start with, but we break it quickly enough and early enough for people to think it's not a cycle. Suddenly she's turning, and we got a really simple little performance piece of her hearing something in the distance and not sure what to do about it. Now this, as I said, is layering animation on top of each other. It's playing every bit of animation. It's adding what we've done on top of the walk. There's another way we can use these, where we can have two bits of animation and ask the software to blend or move from one piece to the other to give a different look, a different vibe. So just to show you what I mean, if I right click on one of these layers of these pieces of animation that we've added so far, you can see layer mode here says additive. So what it means is it's adding all this piece together. Now if I open up another scene, we've got enough time, yeah, should be done in. We got a fairly funky eagle flying. This is a curious little character. Just wait for it to come up. There you go. Wait for it to finish its thing. It's not the most attractive bird in the world. It's a really quite old character, this eagle. You'll probably see at times the feathers just go crazy. I've lost it already. Come back. Where are you? There we are. There. Cool. So yeah, the feathers go weird. It's all funky. I mentioned earlier, some of the free character rigs, the free characters you can use in Test or Maya. Because they're free, you can't really complain. But it's not too bad. So anyway, we've got, it says scrubbing it backwards. Let's hide all the bits. Show nothing, just making sure I can't break it before I show you what I was going to do, because if I break it, we won't be anywhere. There you go. So it's fairly straightforward. It's another cycle. It's a bird flying, an eagle flying. In repetition. It's like another wind-up toy. So it's the same process though. If we come back to here, we've got animation, walk cycle thumbnails. If you search for maybe flight cycle, let's see what we get. There you go. There is some diagrams of how a bird should look maybe, and what frame number to make the bird look like that. And you can see it finishes in the same pose or same look as it started, so the software can repeat it. So same process, we get quite a good result pretty quickly, and that's basically what we got here. So if I do select everything, you can see there's the repetition there. This is actually a key. This is actually keyed out to do a couple of flaps. I think let's have a look. Wings down, up, down, up. So that's twice. It's repeated. 3, 4, 5, 6. That's not a problem because it still finishes the same position where it starts. And we've just asked the software to repeat it again and again and again. So it's fine. It's just repeating 6 flaps. But again, it's a cycle, so it's repetitive. But what we can do is use the same method, these funky animation layers, to maybe have the eagle go from a flap to a glide, and gently into a glide, and then maybe gently go back into a flight. And that would be, again, doable in here, in these one set of keys, these one graph editor, that was what this is. It's all doable, but if we can do it easier some other way, then let's go for the easier option. So all I'm going to do is a really very quick glide animation. All we've got at the moment is the bird flapping. I want the bird to glide. So what I'm going to actually do is grab everything apart from that. I want them. I don't want that. That's just the big control for the whole bird. I just want to move the actual pose of the bird. So that's, I think, everything. Checking. Yep. That I want to use. It's everything. I want everything for that bird. This time I'm going to click on this icon again to create a new layer. There comes my base animation, which is the flapping. This is going to be eagle gliding or eagle glide. But I'm going to change it now. I'm going to right click on it, and instead of saying add the animation I'm about to do, I'm going to say this animation is going to override the bird flying. And the moment I do that, the bird has gone back into its default position. I seem to have missed the feet. It's got funky claws still gripping once. I'll leave that, it's fine. It's just because I didn't grab the controls at the bottom, I think. That's all it is. Not worried about that right now. You can see it's gone back and it's not doing anything apart from the claws that I missed. So all I'm going to do is animate very quickly a really quick glide. All the bird's going to do is just roll around a bit and maybe a bit of bend on the wings. So let's have a quick go. Oh, there you go. It's probably those two that I missed over there, those little suckers. So let's set a key here and store the value is what I mean. And let's rotate the bird slightly. I'm going to do this speed animating. Let's have a go. Tilt the bird a bit. Again, tilt I haven't used this one for a while. Is that the tail? Yeah, there you go. There. And maybe the wings. Something's tilting that way, so the wings will tilt down a bit. That was my bird impression. That was me imagining what would be like tilting. I'm thinking the wings here, it's not that one. What do I want? What do I want? I want these controls. Where are we? Da, da, da. Why is that not there? So we go, oh, there you go. I need to change this. There we go. Cool, there we go. Now I think the wings will work. It's just because I've done a complete new bit of animation, so you had to reset it. There you go. So maybe the wings will dip down and up there. We'll try and do this really quickly because we're running out of time. A bit much. It's only supposed to be a gentle glide. So let's say that's our start pose. And all I'm going to try and do is the bird tilting left and right and back again. Something simple like that. Only because of time. Now you tilt that way. Just check that a second, see how that looks before I do the rest. That'll do. It's going to be a bit mechanical, but we'll be fine. And maybe the tail come out. I think the tail can open up as well, just to play with it a little bit. And this time the wings will dip the other way, but then curl up this way. Super, super quick. I think that's quite a nice one for there. There you go, that's better. And what have we got so far? Wings down, wings up. That tail opening is a bit annoying. Fussing over a speed animation of a tail. Let's open that up. Okay. And then I want it to go back to where it started. So all I'm going to do is tell it to copy our start pose to somewhere else, out there, and then ask it to repeat that process. Just going to lock that. There you go. So there is my poses from there to there to there. And if I ask it to repeat it, he says, curves, pre-infinity, cycle, curves, post-infinity. So I'm asking it to cycle the animation. There you go. Oh, it's awful. How long we got? Oh, 5 minutes. It's fine. I can keep going. I'm just going to fix that because I'm tempted to. I can't help myself. It just looks too mechanical, even for a glide. There's a bit of overlap there, bit of overlap there, and maybe a bit there. I'm being super picky over what is a simple little practice, but there you go. Can't help myself. Just adding a little bit of bend to the wings, so they look a bit flowing. Do the same here. Let's think what would happen to the wing there. I thought that would kind of flow off a bit of bend there. Just to make a little bit of gentle wind effect on the wings. It's going to look a bit funky, but we're running out of time. All we're really after is a quick glide. It's a very smooth glide. It's a calm day. We'll say that. There you go. It's obviously going to take more time. Make it. This actually, if you get a nice bird rig, I mean, this one's not too bad. It's a bit old, but you can get some nice stuff with feathers and so on. So obviously, if you had time, you'd have the feathers fluttering and the wingtips folding up, so on and so on. But I'm running out of time. So what we got is an animation of a very, very basic glide. We've also got an animation of the flight cycle, the flapping. This one, the glide, I've told it to override the flight. But what I can do is now ask it to blend from one to the other. Let me show you what I mean. If I turn this back on. At the start, I want the bird to be flying. And I've got this slider at the bottom. And what I can say is at the start, the eagle glide should be 0 value. What I mean is the weight of it or the effect of it should be 0. I don't want any of it. He says quickly do an increment to save because it crashes. I'll wait for that. Cool. So because the gliding is saying don't do any gliding, it's dropped through and said, oh, okay, in that case, you want to do the flight. And what I'll do is I'll find a point where I want to sort of start to fade into the gliding. 3, and let's say around there, and the wings come up. Because I'm picturing it's quite nice if the wings are up and then they come down into a glide. So from this point onwards, I'm going to say store that value there. And it's remembered that I don't want at the 0 value. So it's remembered that I want flying up to that point. But then maybe, he says, just checking, bird, cool. Where have we gone? Back there, here you go. So when do I want the gliding to kick in? Well, maybe around that frame to 1. So what I've got is now the flying, and then over a number of frames, it will blend or slowly move into the gliding. And it's going to glide and glide and glide. And maybe that's the last point I want it to be gliding. So I'll say store that. But then over a number of frames or a range of time, go back into the flying. And I haven't checked the timings or anything. It's been totally off the cuff, but let's have a look. Flying, 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 glide, very simple glide, and then back into the flying. And because it's blending it or transitioning from the glide to the flying gradually, you can see the first flight cycle, first flap is quite gentle because it's still partially gliding. And again, that's another way of breaking from the cycle. So all I'm trying to say is that if you are going to have a go animation, you can get the trial software for free. You can get the rigs for free, some rigs for free. And if you're going to try anything, have a go at a walk cycle. Download some images of characters flying in cycles or walking in cycles. Have a go at just putting that character in that pose, in that position at those frames. Get it repeating nicely and cleanly. And then for relatively small effort, start to think about what you want to put on top of that to make it more interesting. Because although cycles are a very good demonstration of body mechanics, and by that I mean how the body moves, that's their benefit. Walk cycles are good and flight cycles are good to show that you understand how people move and characters move. But they're also rather boring because people see that they're cycles and repetitive. But you can use these animation layers to plop on top and to make something that is actually relatively straightforward look a little bit more interesting. So I hope, and just because I'm running out of time, I hope that was pretty clear. I hope it kind of showed that not everything has to be hard work or overly confusing. Because this hooks back to what I said at the start, I think, is that part of the learning process is working out how you want to use the software. You can use it one way. I could have just animated a bird flying and then changed all the values to put the bird into a glide and then make the bird slowly come back into a flight again. I could have done that one other way with just using these. He says, bringing them back. I could have gone in and added more of these on here, but that's going to be very confusing and hard work. I instead chose to use this option, these things called animation layers, and it made my life a lot easier. So like I say, part of the process, the learning process, is thinking about what you want to achieve in the software and thinking, how can I do it best and easiest for me? Because if you choose one route, you could find it hard going. If you choose another route, you might find it's easier. But when you get to the end result, no one will know except you. And you really just want to get to the ideal solution is that you create what you want in the easiest possible way that for your brain, and everyone's brain works differently. And the software won't make you work in any one particular way. So that's part of the trick, is working out how you personally want to interact with the software.